So what we're going to learn about is a different way of getting things done. And the way to think about it is it came from the people that, well, it came out of need, okay? A desire to improve and a desire to stop hitting our head against the wall. So everybody was working projects like the same way, like, hey, man, let's just write down a big old list of everything we're going to do. Let's plan it out for the next X number of weeks, months, and years, and let's drive toward the plan. And that works really, really fantastically in a lot of neighborhoods, right? In the waterfall kind of spaces where we got to build a ship, a bridge, or something where we got to know way up front and it's knowable and we nail it down. Now, in different places, that kind of thinking doesn't exactly work because the nature of the problem or the thing that you're building doesn't uncover itself at the beginning. Like if we're building something entirely new, that's like in a digital sense, like a new computer system or something like that, we have ideas of what we want to do and we think we know exactly what it is. But as we start to build it, we unearth problems that blow up in our face and we're stuck. And so the people that went and tried to solve these problems and build these systems using the same old, like heavy planning way up at front problems would have these problems all the time. They'd spend all this time, weeks, months, nailing down exactly what they're going to do because that's what we always did. And then they'd be a couple days, a couple weeks in, and they'd say, oh God, we just tied ourselves to all these different requirements, all these different things. And now we realize that we don't need some of them, most of them. And a lot of the assumptions that we made were wrong because we're starting to talk to the customer. We're starting to build the thing. We're getting the feedback. So what do? So they started to think, well, we have to be more flexible. So all these people all over the world had a similar problem. And they started to take gambles and say, well, what if we don't plan everything for the next 20 years? What would it be like? And so they started coming up with different approaches. And what they arrived through years is basically a philosophy called Agile or agility, where we're going to have an idea of where we're going, and we're going to set ourselves up to plan as we move through the fog or the forest. And in order to be successful in doing that, we have to really, really put a deep focus on the customer and on inspecting the work and the product as we go through. Otherwise, we're just kind of winging it. So we have to be disciplined, but very, very flexible. Now, this whole methodology or this philosophy, if you will, could be put under a big umbrella called Agile. Okay? And you remember I said there were a bunch of different folks out there who just tried to do things in different ways, and they all kind of had a similar approach, less certainty up front, but a lot of checking as we go through and adjusting. They all had like little titles that they called extreme programming or DSDM, this acronym. Another guy called it Crystal, all these different things. One team called it Scrum. Another people like use like Kanban methodologies, all these different like flavors, like it's Baskin Robbins, flavors of ice cream, flavors of Agile, but they're all in the neighborhood, kind of going in the same direction. So all those folks united themselves to say, hey, you're going to do it a little bit your way. I'm going to do it a little bit my way, but there's enough in common that we're all kind of agile. And they came up with this thing called the Agile Manifesto. And you'll see it in the videos. So the Agile Manifesto lays out the principles and practices that they use, and it just kind of ties them to like these core principles. And a lot of them are around transparency. Like, hey, if we're going to go into a fog of building where we kind of know what we're going to build and we're going to figure it out as we go, there ain't no way we're going to live through this if we're not entirely open to how things are working, what the customer thinks, and what the progress is. So transparency is something they all share. Now, they also said that like, hey, the key thing is that once we build something, we got to look at it and we got to have the customer look at it. They got to inspect it. Do they like it? Do they not? What do they realize about the product now that they have it going and not? So transparency, inspection, and then as we learn, the next principle is adaption. Like, let's make little tweaks as we go based on our inspection and the fact that the customer is not going to lie to us. They're going to tell us straight up, it ain't what I thought, or now I realize, or I love it, let's double down. All those things. So it's all about transparency, inspection, and adaption. Now, the two biggest flavors, like the chocolate and vanilla of Agile, are called Scrum and Kanban. And basically, the difference between these is that Scrum says, let's plan 2 weeks at a time, pump a bunch of things out every 2 weeks, little Christmas presents every 2 weeks, and let's go from there. We can set up these little mini projects that all dovetail and work as we push things out. Now, Kanban says, we're not going to time ourselves in 2 weeks. We're just going to continuously pump out goodness. And we'll just put the coolest stuff at the top and work it through. Kind of like the sheet metal shop or something might do. All the things that we need to do, all the work packages, take one, work it. Take one, work it. So those are the two philosophies that have grabbed a hold of the world and that they go in there. Like Angela says, she's a certified Scrum Master and product owner. She's talking about Scrum. That's the methodology. Okay? Somebody's in chat saying something. I created a Kanban back in 2001. Absolutely. Christine, we'll talk about it in a second. Yeah. And so those are the philosophies that they go through. That's fantastic. My computer just locked up. And then, all right, so what we're going to learn is called Scrum. That's the predominant. We'll learn Scrum and Kanban, but like 90% of the world, this is what they're talking about, Agile. Okay? So when we think about having to get work done, and I said that Scrum was all about chunking the work up in 2 week little engagements, we're going to talk about how that happens, how it's organized. Now, the people that created Scrum said it's a lightweight framework. So if you think about like the PMBOK, they had, and all those things we did in Waterfall, they had rules upon rules upon rules, documents upon documents, all this overwhelming stuff. Those are like the guidelines that they set. Now, Agile doesn't have all those thick things. Agile's little book is this long. It's like 12, 13 pages versus this thing. So the brevity of this or the shortness of this is refreshing, but also if they write it down, we better think about it because there ain't too many rules or guidelines, but the ones that are there are super duper important. And so that's what we're going to think about. Now, there's one ginormous starting difference between waterfall management and Scrum management of projects. The first thing that jumps out and goes like, whoa, this feels weird, is that in waterfall, the project manager is the ruler of the roost, okay? The project manager does everything. They wear about 63 hats all at the same time. They deal with the sponsor. They deal with the customer. They deal with the team. They coach the team. They define the requirements. They assign the work. They estimate the work even before they assign it. They monitor everything. They coach everybody. They discipline people. They handle procurements. I'm running out of room. There's hats galore. Cool. Project manager's a robust, strong person. But that's like one point of failure. What Agile or what Scrum does is it spreads all those hats, all those responsibilities across 3 roles. And I want you to change the word role to responsibility in your mind. So the 3 responsibilities or little roles are as follows. Number 1 is called the product owner. And when I think of the product owner, I think of Steve Jobs. So what's distinctive about Steve Jobs? Steve Jobs seemed to have a vision for pretty much everything. Like this is his product, the Mac or the iPhone or the iPad, the whatever. It was Steve's, okay? He had a vision. He knew the steps that he wanted the team to go through, and he was fastidious and detailed in what they were doing. So he knew what they wanted to do. So Steve Jobs has a vision, and he is a visionary, like what type of person? This is what we do. So he's kind of steering the ship in that respect. But as we think about it, I doubt that Steve Jobs could computer program himself out of a phone book or, whatever. I can't either, but he can definitely envision the future. So that person deals with the customer. They deal with the vision, the roadmap. They deal with the sponsor. They handle the money. They're the captain of the ship. The second person is we put a heavy focus on what we call the dev team. And you might say, but Scott, there's a team in Waterfall, right? That's who does the work. Well, the dev team is like a super team. First of all, it's smaller. Scrum teams are 10 or less, just call it less than 10 people in totality, like a little band of brothers and sisters. And the dev team is empowered. They are self-organizing. They're self-managing. I need to get a better writer machine. Self-managing. They're autonomous. They're cross-functional. All these buzzwords. There's a lot of self in this. And the autonomous means they run themselves. So what's different about them is that we really empower and challenge the team to do a lot of things that a traditional team is not pressured to do. So what is different about a dev team? They have to estimate the work. They decide to bring the work in. They commit to finishing the work in a defined timeline. They set their expectations. They set they divvy out the work to each other. They manage themselves. They do not have a foreman or a project manager looking over their shoulders and go, whoosh, you should do that. They run the show for the work. Now, it takes time to develop them to go and be able to do this on their own. And the person that develops them and others and the product owner is called the Scrum Master. Now, the Scrum Master is a little like Yoda in the Star Wars-y movies or Jiminy Cricket from Pinocchio, okay? And so what the Scrum Master's job really is to do is to increase the effectiveness of both the product owner and the developers, to make them better, coach them, guide them, facilitate them, push them, et cetera, help break roadblocks so that Steve Jobs and the development, like the craftswomen and men, like the Navy SEALs team of developers, builders, can be better. Now, the Scrum Master might help break down roadblocks and do those kind of things. But what the Scrum Master does not do is the Scrum Master does not assign work, does not do work, does not anything with the hands. It's almost like they have big oven mitts on where they're like, dude, I can't even hold anything. Dude, all I can do is give you advice. And most of the time, I'm just here to challenge you and develop you and help you see the problems that are happening and help you guide yourself to it. Kind of like Yoda, little dude Yoda in those movies. He didn't really do anything other than ask weird questions. So that's what the Scrum Master is. So the roles are different. There is no project manager in Scrum. The responsibilities are split 3 ways. So the development of the team, the coaching of the team, those kind of things, making sure that the things are happening is kind of leveraged by the Scrum Master. The vision, the drive, the lining up, what we're going to do in the order of priority, product owner, handling the money, dealing with the customer. And the dev team is the cranking it out of the work, obviously. And they're also managing themselves, divvying up the work, estimating work, holding themselves accountable, all those things. So it's a little bit different, or a lot of bit different, okay? And so as we go through this, one thing is the roles and responsibilities. And now what we're going to do now is we're going to draw out the production process, how work gets done. And the way we do that is to draw these things called artifacts. These are if we think about a mechanical system or something on the ship, if we had a water system, let's see, what we might have is, if we had to get water to, the galley or the staterooms, we'd have a big tank that would hold the water or whatever, the liquid is. We would have a smaller tank that things go into, and then we would pump something out on the back end to try to work it into like a shipyard or ship reference. Okay. In a sense, like if we had a fuel tank here, we had a boiler here to produce power, and then out would come steam, which is converted into power. That's essentially how boilers work in the simplest sense. We feed there into the boiler, they burn it up, bang, bang, boom, and out comes steam. So we have a similar thing. We want to produce something in a similar sense. So we're not having fuel or boilers or any of that stuff. What we are doing is we need a place to store all the potential ideas. Because in Agile, we said we do not know at the beginning everything we're going to do. And we're not going to lock ourselves down to say on day 3, this is exactly what we're doing and exactly what order and whatever. We just don't know yet. So instead of just being laissez-faire and winging it and saying like, no, dude, we're just flexible, we're agile. We need a middle ground. So what we can do is make a big bucket or a runway. And we could say any idea that we have, any requirement, we've got to throw it in this list. And so what we do is the product owner, I'll draw the people in blue. The product owner is up here, and he or she takes the ideas and throws them on the list. Boom, boom, boom. Every one of those little lines is a requirement or a capability, a functionality, something we got to build. So they throw them on the list. And the list, that bottom of the green little bucket, it goes on forever. You can just throw as much as you want on there. And the cool thing about this thing is called a product backlog. The cool thing about this product backlog is that there's no guarantee that if it's on the list, you have to do it. So that's nice. So it allows some flexibility there. Just throw it on there. It's an idea. Now, what the product owner needs to do is that they have a pocket full of money, but it ain't forever. And they got a customer that they're trying to make happy. Like you think about Steve Jobs is trying to, they have got a good amount of money over there in Apple, but maybe when they started, they didn't. And they knew they had to get the best possible product in somebody's hands. And so what the product owner does is he or she looks at all these little lines there, these requirements, and says, based on my understanding of the customer, how I talk to the stakeholders in my, the sponsor, the people that matter, the people I trust, the market, whatever it is, I'm going to rank all the things in here from the greatest, the best things, the stuff that like, let's build it now, to the stuff that's like, ho hum, maybe we'll build it sometime. So they're taking all these lists, these little things, and they're like, oh, this is really great. Oh, we can do this later. We'll do this now. This is in the middle. They're ranking it. They're constantly ranking it because that backlog evolves as we learn inspection and adaption. As we learn, it goes there. So the product owner owns the backlog. All right. Now, as we go through this, as the product owner brings things to the top, having a list of like, this is what I want is great, but at some point we got to do some work. So as the project starts, this is what we do next. We have another little box that I draw, and this is to represent what we call the sprint, okay? The 2-week period of time that the team works in. They work 2-week chunk to 2-week chunk. And so this 2 weeks is a defined period of time, and it's like a factory. That's where the dudes and dudettes do their job. And as they're in there, they have a list, or they have their own little bucket. And they need their work to go in there. So they know if they only got 2 weeks to do work, how much work should they bring in? About 2 weeks. Now, the hard part is for the team is that it's not like cutting steel or welding joints where we've done it 100 times and we know pretty darn much how roughly long it should take. The team has the challenge of like, how much do we bring in? How many of these stories, these little cards, these little things do we bring in? So the way they do that is they have a line that goes between here and here. It's like a pipe. And in between the pipe, there's a little valve. And the valve is not a real valve. It's just, I was an engineer, worked on ships, thinking valves on pipes and junk like that. And that valve is where we have our first meeting. And that meeting is called sprint planning. Because this 2 weeks is called the sprint. So we're planning for what they're going to do. Now, that meeting's about an hour and a half, 2 hours long every 2 weeks. The first, like Monday morning, first thing. And so if we think what's happening, like the first time we do it, the team doesn't have anything to work on. So their little list right here is empty. And they're like, what are we working on, boss? The product owner's been thinking about all these great things that we could do. And so the product owner and the team show up to the sprint planning meeting, and the product owner comes in and says, here's what we're doing. Here's what I want to accomplish over the next 2 weeks. This is why I'm going to spend 20, 30, 50,000, whatever it is, to fund you guys for the next 2 weeks. So he or she lays out what we call the sprint goal. Their proposal, like, hey, the first thing we need to build is this kind of functionality. We need to have the ability to send emails, receive emails, and write emails or whatever. We need to build that right now because that's like the base stuff that the people want to see. And the team goes, okay, that kind of makes sense. It seems like the smart thing to do. Great. Tell us more. And then what the person does, the product owner, who's like steering the ship, says, hey, this little feature, this little feature, this feature, this feature, this feature, I think all those things really relate to our sprint goal, like the email thing. And the team goes, okay, all right, kind of makes sense. Tell us more. And so that the product owner goes like, well, that one is, and starts to explain it. Maybe shows them some pictures, some details, what the acceptance criteria might be. Product owner doesn't know it as deeply as normally in waterfall, but tries to make sense of it and explain it. So we call that product, because we're talking about the product backlog items. Those are those little stories, the things with the little circle next to them. Those are the features, the things that the product owner wants the team to build. And the team goes, all right, if we're going to sign up to this, I got to know a little bit more. So they're going to start asking questions back. All right, hold on. That first one where you said like the emails, you got to be able to create an email. What do you mean by create an email? Do I hit a button and it pops up, or how does it work? And they're like, well, I mean, I think it would work like this. And they go, all right, tell me more. How would it operate in this way? Or what happens if I turn my phone to the side? What would happen? Like stuff like that. They're asking them back and forth. The reason why is because the development team are the craftsmen and women. They're the dudes and dudettes that got to build stuff. So if they're going to commit to doing something, they better push a little bit and say like, all right, I got it. And what they're really trying to understand is how hard it is. Because each of them, one person might be like, they handle the user interface, like what it looks like. One person might do like the back end computer stuff. One person might do the front end and the connections and the passwords and blah, 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 all that security stuff. They each have their own little skills usually. And they're all looking at it from their own side and saying, either that's really hard or it's not, or somewhere in the middle. And they're trying to get their head around it so that they can commit. And by them looking at the stories and estimating it amongst themselves, kind of like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? All right, this is kind of hard. Can you do this? You ever done this before? How will we do it? Do we have the skills to do it? Shit like that. They end up going, all right. Here, product owner, we've heard enough. We've talked. We think the sprint plan is this. We think, and this is all within like 2-ish hours, that we can get this one done. We can get this one done. We don't think this one's it's not the right time to do this right now because it's related to something else and it's too big anyway. Like you got to think more about that. It's not ready. we can also do this one, and if you want, we can pull this one in. So they make a push back to the product owner and say, we think we can do those ones with little checks in it. You cool with that? The product owner, back and forth, because product owner wants everything yesterday and for free. That's what everybody in life wants. And so they hem and haw, and they go, okay. Product owner might say, that sounds great. You guys can pull that off? And they go, yeah, we're pretty sure. And so what happens then is the team grabs the handle of the valve, metaphorically, opens the valve, and pulls in these user stories. I want to emphasize that there's a lot of discussion through like this part in that meeting, but at the end of the day, the team has said we can get that done. So they open the valve, and the ideas, those requirements, just those flow in, or they bring them in. So if we see it go over like this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, oopsie, I erased the box. It's going to be all right. I can redraw it. Those ideas get put on the team's list. Now, that's all the work that the team's going to do. They're locking it down. See that green box like right here as like steel. Like, boom, we're closing the door. Team's going heads down, ear to the grindstone, whatever you want to say, to get that work done. They ask the product owner, say, hey, dude, sure, you can add something, but, man, come on. Like, let us just get this stuff done. So that's the first step. And then think about what happens with this backlog. Now we got some holes in here, right? Nothing here, nothing here. What really happens is all the work kind of moves up. It's like that kids' candy Pez, where like you open the top and like a piece of candy comes out and another one pulls up. So all these things kind of move up. Nice and easy. Like they're going to move up and they're going to move up and it's going to fill up again and it'll end up looking like this. And the product owner's got to go back because the things in the middle, we haven't thought about that well. He's got to go back because they're at the top now and start breaking them down, thinking about them, adding new ideas on there, talking to the customer, getting it right. So they call that refining the backlog, trying to get it going. So the product owner will work on that. And when they leave that meeting, that's what the product owner goes to do, turns around, handles their backlog. What the team does is they go and try to figure out how to pull this thing off, this meeting. So what they do is they say, it's ours. We run ourselves. We can ask for help when we need it. No big deal. But let's get rolling. I'll take this. You want to take that? You take that. All right. Call me if you need me. I'll call you if I need you. We're good, right? And so they go off and start running with the work in a positive way. And every day, at a minimum, they get together for 15 minutes in a meeting for the team, by the team. Sure, the Scrum Master can come and help facilitate it a little bit to get it going, get the team comfortable at running themselves. But really, it's a meeting for the team, by the team, to show up to go like, all right, we got, a week and 4 days to pull all this work off. This is what I got done today. This is what I think I'm going to get done or this is what I got done yesterday. This is what I think what I'm going to get done today. I see a couple problems here. Can I get some help? Have you ever done this? How you doing? Do you need any help? I'm going to get my work done. I'm going to hand it to you. They're corresponding. They're collaborating as they move down the path. And it's called a daily scrum. It's also colloquially called a daily stand-up. Now, if you were to just to look at that little thing, it kind of looks like those dudes are in jail, the dev team, but it also kind of looks like a football field where they're like moving down the field to like the end zone trying to score because they only have 2 weeks, 10 business days to get all that work done. And at the end, they got to show the stuff that they finished, and it better be done as much as possible to the product owner, Steve Jobs. So every day they're meeting not to just status red, yellow, green, that kind of foolish, like no use meeting, no value meeting. Their daily scrums are like football huddles in a football game. If a football team had the ball on like the 20-yard line and the quarterback on first down went back and got sacked and lost like 9 yards, the next play, they'd say, okay, well, that just happened. It's now 2nd and 19, meaning we got a long way to go to get a first down and move the ball. It's going to change our plans. Same thing with the team. If they start finding problems, they're like, all right, what can we do to jump on this, to knock it down? What help do we need? Whatever. So they are moving themselves to get the work done. And here's the deal. If you almost complete a lot of things, you've really completed nothing. So what the team is trying to do is close out the work, finish it. And the terms that they use are done. Like that's their standard of like, Agile teams drive to done. And so the team is trying to drive each one of these to a state of completeness or done, that it must meet the definition of done for the product. Completed the acceptance criteria. It's been fully tested and documented. It's ready for approval from the product owner. Cool. So at the end of the 2 weeks, when like the time's up, like, it's the second Friday, it's over, put your pencils down in a sense. There's another meeting. It's called a demo. It's also called a review. Same people show up, product owner, team, Scrum Master's there drinking coffee. What we do in the review is the team goes, all right, here's what we got to a complete status. It's finished. Maybe they got 1, 2, 3 things. So they're only going to show the product owner 3 things that are done. The reason why is because the purpose of the demo and the review meeting is to inspect finished work to see if it satisfies the need, it generates new ideas, and if it's ready to go to the customer. It can be used. So that's what they're doing in the meeting. They'll look at the stuff. They'll take hey, let's pull up the email thing. Let's see if it works. And then sometimes they see it. And if you ever asked to build something or something that you want, and you like, now that you see it, you're like, it's not exactly what I realize I want. That happens a lot. It's not a bad thing. Inspection and adaptation is what we talked about. So any new ideas or adjustments go back into the backlog, and then they fight to like their proper place. Now, any of the cards that the product or the requirements that are done, that the product owner's like, yep, I like it. It works. It solves the problem. It's good. At that point, when they approve it, it becomes like a little Christmas present. The term is an increment. New term, you'll learn it. Increment. I'll learn how to spell it sometime. Increment. And the way we think about it, that is something that we could give to the customer if it seemed like the right time to give it to them. They call it a potentially shippable piece of work. So that's like, oh, yeah, the email works and the other works. Should we give it to the customer right now? And they're like, yeah, let's do it. Like, send it out there, make it a thing. Customer will love it. Like, get it in their hands. Get that smile going. Get the feedback. What they also might say is, dude, it's awesome. It works, but let's do a little bit more, stack it up together, and then give them that because it's like a completed, fuller, solution. So we can make decisions that way. If you think about your phone, every month or so, a release comes out. They make you hit some buttons, download it again, new features. That's what they did. Chunked up some work, packages it a little care package, and gave it to you. So boom, they got it done. Now there's another meeting right after that, because I said in the demo, we do not talk about work that we didn't get done. Because if we talk about work that we almost got done, inevitably, the conversation directly goes into why. Oh, we had a problem with this guy, and he didn't talk to that guy, and this broke, and blah, 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 blah. We take our focus. We would have taken our focus off the complete stuff and learning about that by talking about all the failures. So we do not talk about failures in the review. In the retrospective, which is our continuous improvement meeting, after every 2 weeks, hour and a half-ish, whatever, where we get together with the product owner, the team, and the Scrum Master, the same old folks, and we say, we just did 2 weeks. How'd it go? Well, we had some problems here. Oh, we had some problems here. But there was one good thing that happened in this. So we start talking about all those things. What are the good things that we can emphasize? What's one or two problems that we could probably think through, root cause, come up with a potential solution, and try the next 2 weeks? So that's what we're trying to do in the retrospective. So at that point, we do it all again. We go back. All the work is cleaned out of here. The done stuff has been sent to the customer in a care package. We start another 2 weeks. We clean off, everybody, goes gets a Coke and a smile, and they come back and we do it all again. So the thing that we do, I'll clean off a lot of it. As we look through it, it's kind of like a production process. If we have to get stuff done, there are technically 5 meetings. The bigger structure that holds everything is called the overall sprint. That's the 2 weeks, but we keep doing it over and over and over. So the first meeting that we have, it's always the same. And I'll make it big. The number one meeting that we have is called sprint planning. That's real big. We have it every single time. Remember I said it's only 13 pages, but it lays out, hey, the first meeting you have is called sprint planning. The second meeting you have, that you have technically 10 times or 9 times, is the daily scrum. That's where the team is trying to work themselves down the football field of progress. The third meeting you have is the demo. That's where we inspect the things that were fully completed. The fourth meeting you have is called the retrospective. Let's look back, because we are humans in a production process. Treat ourselves like machines. We would look at how the machines are working together. And the work from that, hopefully, flows from great ideas into the working tank, through the factory, to the shipping dock, onto the customer. And then new ideas are generated by the team and the product owner looking. And when the customer has it, new ideas go back into the product backlog as well. And so over and over and over, we do this 26 times a year. There's only 4 meetings. And that's it. Each has a purpose, each has a reason, each has an output. There's only 3 types of people: a product owner, a development team member, and a Scrum Master. The Scrum team, the Agile team, is that core group: Scrum Master, product owner, dev team. They're less than 10 people, very focused, 100% allocated to this team if you can. It's way better if you are. I run a Scrum team now. I am not 100% allocated to being a product owner. It's not as optimal as it could be, because I have to teach, sell, do other stuff. I run a business. So whatever, but in time, I'm developing a dude to be the product owner, and he will take over 100%. We have a Scrum Master. We have a dev team. They are all 100%, and we're developing a dude. It will be better when that happens. And then I could just be A dude that cuts checks. All right. I don't know how long that took. 45 minutes. What questions do you have? It's a totally new thing. Any thoughts? Any questions?
Yeah, Scott, is it always 2 weeks?
Well, it's arbitrary, but it's 90%, 80, 90% of always 2 weeks. Okay. The people who created like this system to say, dude, we got to draw some lines. We got to set ourselves like some times right here. We can't keep like pushing and pushing. Those dudes started with 3 weeks. The reason why is because they made it up. They were like, 3 weeks feels good. And so the team can decide to say, let's do a 2-weeker. Let's do a 3-weeker. Let's do a 1-weeker. I personally do not like the 3-week. The Scrum guide, and I defer to the experts, say a month or less. Okay. But the most predominant is 2 weeks. A lot of times we will. Okay. So that's the answer. The second thing, anecdotally, or like as a practitioner, is that, man, when you get to the end and you do not get everything done, the natural desire is to say, I'll just give you an extra 3 days. Every single time I want to do that, I'll just give the guys an extra day, 2-3 days, whatever. But every single time I go, don't do it. Don't do it.
Do it.
So I used to do it. Go ahead, Angela. What were you saying?
I was just saying you can't do it.
Can't do it. You can't do it. You want to do it.
You can't.
Yeah, you can't do it. Like, why can't you do it? Or why should you not do it?
Well, I mean, if you really sticking to Scrum and you're sticking to the parameters, a month is all that you get. You no more than a month, because if you go over that, then you're not adhering to the protocol, and you're really setting yourself up. You're setting yourself up for failure.
Yes,
So,
ma'am. And then like, yeah, I love it. And so what happens is like, there's a thing called Parkinson's law. It's like a natural kind of like observation. This dude named Parkinson's, I think he was like a ship guy way back in the day in England or whatever. He said that work expands to fill the time allowed. Give them 2 weeks, it's going to take 2 weeks. Give them 2 months, it's going to take 2 months. You know? And so by setting 2 weeks and not going over, the team will start saying, shoot, he's serious. She's serious about the 2 weeks. So let's not be laissez-faire about how much we bring in. Let's try to be crisp on that. Estimating work is hard. And then let's do everything we can to drive things to a completed status, because he's not going to give us an extra 2 days. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to throw the work away and not do it. It just means that, like, we're going to get to the end. We're going to lock it down, and then we're going to talk about why, because it's the why of like, why couldn't we get it done? Oh, we didn't realize it was this complicated. Okay, so why did you not realize it? What do I need to do as a product owner to help you understand the work better? Because I'm doing my best, but I could do better. So by not giving them extra 2 days, it's allowing us to feel the pain and talk about it and try to find a better solution for how we do work. And sometimes on that, when we get to the end, we're like, ugh, like we got extra, we got some other stuff. I will go, hey, boys and girls, do you guys want to do a 1 week sprint where we frame up that stuff, really nail it down, and a couple of those ideas that you came up with, throw those in there as well, get a good couple of increments going, crank it out. Doesn't feel like 2 weeks to me. Feels like a weekish, but I don't know anything. What do you guys think? And they're like, yeah, it feels about a week. We can throw a couple of these bells and whistles, and we can clean up a little bit. We can, what they call refactor some things, which means like simplify the code, simplify the build so that it works a little bit better, more effective and efficient. And so we'll probably go like 2 week, 2 week, 2 week, week, 2 week, 2 week, 2 week, 2 week, week, just to kind of clean it up. Does that make, yeah, that's a good question, dude. What other questions we got? Or observations or whatever. Christine, you said you had oh, go ahead. That's me. Go, Angela. Just in time. Christine, you said just in time. I like it. Say more.
No, I was just not to date myself, but when Kanban was such a huge thing, everything was just in time.
Yeah.
So I have a heavy manufacturing background, right? So I was a buyer in manufacturing. Everything was about inventory turns, inventory. So you couldn't keep on this. The work, as soon as the work flew down to the floor, you were buying material, and I would buy material on a Wednesday so it would deliver on a Monday.
Yeah. It's wild, right?
Yeah. And that's
And
how we were doing it. So what yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No. You're doing fantastically. Keep going. Yeah.
That was before MRP and any of those things even existed, right? You had project management, and project management was like, yeah, we got a project. Here we go. We got a sales order. They need it yesterday.
Get it going. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the hard part is like try to make money, try to move things. It's just the right thing to do. But it's like there's always ups and downs. There's nothing wrong. I'm a lean guy. So like I like just in time and Kanban and flow and all those different, that's like the philosophy. The grandfather or grandmother of Agile is lean. Okay. So like, or might even be mother of Agile is lean in the lineage. And so there's a couple different concepts to talk about. When we talked about like, when we had the team working their little 2 weeks and they had their little sprint backlog of things they need to accomplish, what we want to do is we want the team to visualize their work. And so what the team does, here, I'm going to clean the board up so I can get a little bit more space. Like there's the product backlog, right? All these like stories, do. There's the sprint backlog, the sprint and the sprint backlog, all these stories, do. Now, this work, what we found, I wasn't involved, like, is that visualizing work, but my boys do it. It's the best way. Let's just see what we're working on. Let's manage it as it goes through. So no different than we're in a shop. What is the list of work that we got to pull off? That's essentially the sprint backlog. Hey, we as the team just committed to doing like this work, that card. I think, that card and that card. Like these are like the little things. In a second, I'll try to pull up the Jira board that we use. I think I got access right on this computer. And then, okay, so we all visualize that's what we're going to do. And then we say, all right, this is the work that's like ongoing currently. So what we'll do is like somebody will bring a card over. That'll move over here. And what'll happen is like, it moves, goes over there. And then the really good thing is like you want to put somebody's face on it. So like you got like the description, whatever, but in reality, you want to say like, hey, Joe's got this. Then they keep bringing them up. You see like Joe, Tommy, Sammy, Sally, Sue, whatever. Who's got work? What we don't want to see is Joe stacking up 14 jobs because Joe's only got 2 hands and 1 brain. So Joe needs to control his whip, work in progress, where we will develop rules on the team to say how many cards jobs should be working at once. The best answer is 1. I'll allow 2 or whatever. So like, it's like you go down to a shop in the yard and you see a guy in his workstation and he's got like 9 open work packages. Now, it might be just to get the little CPI goodness of like opening up a work package, whatever at the front, who knows, playing the games. But like in reality, unless like a couple jobs are in paint or, getting whatever, and he has to wait for them, he might just be starting a lot of jobs and not finishing them. So what we want is continuous flow. So we want to cap the number of jobs at any time that one person is working. So Joe's got 1 or 2 jobs rolling. Then like, let's just say if we go in there, Sue's got a job and Tom's got a job, try to pick short names. Like as we are in there, if I was a Scrum Master and I saw Joe, I'd be like, Joe, what's up, bro? How you getting this work done? So we want to cap our work in progress, limit it so that we can figure out what the heck we need to get this work going and push it, move it. So the other column, and I'm just covering a lot of stuff, to do, doing, like there might be like a QA, a test thing. So the cards, as they get done, get thrown over there. Somebody looks at them and checks them. And then like done, we want to get them to a done status. And then there's like usually like a blocked column where someone, if they have a job, they're like, dude, I got to throw it over here because I am stuck. I need help. So by making this board visual, like on the computer or in a physical location, everybody can see at any time what's going on, where the work is, and who's got it. When they show up to their little daily scrum, they pull up the board. Hey, this is what I got going. These are my cards. I'm going to be done tomorrow. Here's the issue that I'm having, blah, 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 blah. It affects you. Let's go. Let's talk it out. They'll talk about the problems after the 15 minutes, like Joe and Sally, if they have like something that can help each other. We don't go deep into the problems in the daily scrum. We want to visualize the work. Transparency, we said early. Transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Transparency every day to like, what are we doing? No work is allowed to be off the board. That means like, if you're working it, put it on the board so we can see, so that we can know what if you need some help. So that's a Kanban board, which is used to visualize the work as it progresses through the sprint. The key concept is limit the WIP, control the amount of work that's ongoing so that it can get done and moved. Done and moved, because the only thing we get credit for is finishing work. Yeah. I'm just going to keep on talking. Any other questions? I like these questions. All right, I got more. All right. So we're trying to get things to the promised land, to the done status. Now, if we get to the review meeting, like the end meeting, and you're the Steve Jobs of it, and somebody brings you like, hey, I'm done with this. And you start to like play with it or do it, hit it, move it, whatever, and it ain't done. Like it's buggy. It's weird. It's not fully complete. What are you going to say? You'd be like, bro, this ain't done. Why am I finding obvious bugs? So at that point, the game's over. The 2 weeks over. It sucks. What we need to do is everybody on the team, all the team members, in alliance with the product owner, have an agreement that when I, as a team member, say, I'm done with this thing, it's the same thing that Angela believes, Michael believes, Earl, Christine, Karja, anybody. When our standard of done is done, we agree. To say it a different way, if I'm loosey-goosey in how I do stuff and Karja isn't, he's going to be upset if I hand him some work and go like, yeah, I pretty much got it done, dude. Like, I'll clean it up later. He's gonna be like, no, dude, you're passing on poor quality, which feels a lot like in the shops, the emphasis on building quality into the product. It's the same thing here. We do it. And then at the end, we have a concept called the definition of done. The acronym is DOD, definition of done. In order for work to get to the customer, like it must be in alliance or it must satisfy the definition of done. And the definition of done is a team or organization agreed upon standard that like now they can set what other standard they want, but this is just the one that we use. All work is done, like all the tasks are complete. The acceptance criteria, I don't even know why I scribble, is met. Like the dude who built it said, like, I did all the work. I proved to myself that I met the acceptance criteria, the standards, the tests, whatever. It has passed like the tests, inspections. It's been tested and inspected. It's been documented, like, like we wrote the things down so that, like, if the developers die at night or win the lottery, someone else can pick it up and work it or know how to do it, whatever. So it's been documented, sufficiently. And the last thing is the product owner approves. So if all these things have been satisfied, then the work is done, meaning we ain't got to touch it again. If we want to, we can go give it to Mr. and Mrs. Customer and they'll smile from ear to ear. Now, if we miss one or two, the customer, and it goes out into the customer, they're going to be like, I found more bugs than is reasonable. What are y'all doing? Bad news bears. So that's why we have a strict standard of completeness on the back end of a sprint. It's like a very strong bouncer that's really hopped up on their job on the back end of the sprint to be like, no, you ain't coming into, you're not leaving the club unless you're right. Now, definition of done on the back, strong bouncer, real clear standards. On the front of the sprint, like the work coming in, we don't want that burly bouncer to be in the front because that'll prevent us from getting work in. So we got to have a little bit looser standards when we introduce work to the sprint. We just got to know like the basics because Agile, we deal with a lot of ambiguities. So the standards on the front end of the sprint are called the definition of ready to work. The stuff on the back end is definition of done for the customer. Done as in we ain't got to do anything more. So definition of ready, like a little bit more flexible bouncer is like, hey man, you can't just have a wild idea and like us work on it. Got to give us a little bit more. Got to document it like as a card. Okay. You got to write it in a certain format, usually like called user story format, whatever. You've got to have acceptance criteria because like we'll never know if we're done if we don't have a finish line. And that's it. If you give me those and we talk it out, that's enough for the team to work it. So that's the standard on the front end. Doesn't have to be like a detailed work package like down to sheet metal shop where it's like every single thing is nailed down. We don't need that. It doesn't mean we're loosey-goosey too much. But like we don't need it in that vivid detail. There's a lot of like in Agile to figure it out. We're covering basically the whole damn class. Sorry. So this is good. We've covered a lot. I got more time. I'll give you one more. Estimating. How do you think we estimate in Agile? Any idea on how hard stuff is? Any guesses? I don't know. It's hard. So I've covered a lot. Don't worry. This is just like fire hosey, kind of almost just, In Agile, we don't have a track record usually of stuff that, 7 holes that we've built in the past in the same assembly and that we can bounce off of. So we can't really go and say it's going to take 2.75 hours, 12 point whatever hours. It's just not knowable. If the product owner like Steve Jobs or me, the dude that's controlling the money, were to come down and say, I came up with this idea. I don't know what I'm drawing. I came up with this idea and I think it takes 14 and a half hours. Like I can do that. I got a big mouth. But the conversation at that point would be like, Scott, dude, you don't even know your password. Like, how are you going to know that it's 14 and a half hours? And they would just start negotiating and fighting me on the 14 and a half, and we'd negotiate something. It's a worthless negotiation. What I should say is, hey, I got this story. I wrote it down here. Let me tell you about it. I think it's doable in a reasonable amount of time. I talked to some of the team. I talked to some other people. It's relatively reasonable. What do you think? How hard do you think, as craftsmen and women, people who build stuff, you tell me how hard you think it is, and you tell me roughly how long it's going to take, ish. Because all we're trying to do is realize that we got a bucket, the sprint backlog, and we just don't want to overfill it too much. We want to be like right here. You know, we can never like be perfect. We'll never know, but we want to be, you know, around this neighborhood of filling it up. So what the team does in the conversations is like, all right, tell me more about this work. And the team will rally around Joe Smith, Sally Smith, whatever Smith, all these people. And like, they all have their own experiences and whatever. They look at the work and they go, I think it's like super hard. I think it's pretty darn hard. I think it's like pretty hard. And this goes, dude, this is easy. You're like, hard, easy. Like, what do you know, dude, that I don't know? Are you just not seeing it because you don't have the experience? Or are you've already cracked this nut and you're a super genius? So the good thing is, if we can get into this conversation and say like, I think it's hard, I think it's hard, I think it's hard, I think it's easy, they can all talk and figure out who's right. Oh, you're right. It ain't that hard if we do it this way and the other. Oh, yeah, okay. This one is pretty darn easy. Let's call that, and they make up a number scale. Oh, that's like 3 out of 10. Then they say, hey, show us the next one. They talk about it and they go, yep, it's kind of medium. We're going to call it a 5. Then they go, this one is like, this one's crazy hard. And they talk about it and they go, this is like a 10 hardness. It's a made up scale that these people agree upon just by like, I understand what you mean. Yeah, that's what you mean by hard. The goal is for them to triangulate their brains to say, when they look at work and they push back on the big boss, the product owner, they're like, okay, we understand how hard it is. So that eventually they'll know when they start working together, they'll know based on their like numbering, hardness, whatever kind of brain thinking. All right, we know just enough, like Goldilocks, just enough work to bring in. And so they're like, okay, I feel like we can get an easy one, a medium one, a hard one. I think we can do one more hard one. Let's bring in another like 8-pointer. And they're like, okay, let's bring all those. That's all we can do. That fills us up. It's called relative estimating. In the shipyard, it's more precise. Like they're doing essentially like have a lot of historical evidence and different things. This one is relative. Like they're looking at each other and going like, how hard do you think it is? How hard is it related to the other stuff? How much do you feel like we can get in? They're trying to fill it up so that they can go and run. And then at the end, we can look and say, what did we actually get done? Oh, we got the 3-pointer done. So we get credit for that. We didn't get the 5 thing done. We got the 10 and we got the 8 done. So in our hardness points, which they call story points, we got, and I'm covering everything, 3, 10, and 8. That's we can add that together. That's about like, we got like 21 hardness points. Hardness points don't mean anything to anybody else. It's like our own little judgment scale, like the 4 dudes and 5, 6 people on the team. Then the next time we plan, we go like, last time we did about 21-ish. Let's see how many we bring in and get done. And after time, we say like, the first time we got like 21. The next time we got like 24. This time we got like 19. We got like 23, 20, whatever. Usually over time, you start getting like a steady-ish, what they call velocity. Like velocity, like shoom, the movement of things, right? So like how much we're getting the work done. We're trying to get better at doing work, but if we have a stable velocity, then if we get relatively okay about estimating, then we can feel okay about our ability to bring work in, commit to it, and get done. And it's not just on the team, as I just pontificate all night. A lot of it falls on the product owner. Because if things aren't broken down enough, really hard for these people to understand it enough to make a relatively accurate estimatable guess. So there's a back and forth. The product owner must break work down enough to understand it so that these people can estimate it, work it through. And then as we think about this, the product owner is managing what? The backlog. The backlog has all the ideas. Here's one of the mistakes that I constantly make. I'm like pulled in a couple different directions, and I never give the backlog the focus and attention that it deserves. And the thing that I realize is like, oh, shoot, what happened to my time? I got a sprint planning meeting that starts in like 2 days, and the backlog ain't ready. The stuff at the top, I haven't thought through enough. And I know they're going to ask me questions that I don't have answers for. And I'm letting them down if I get in that meeting and I hadn't thought it through even enough. And so a good product owner has got to spend time what they call refining the backlog. So when I draw that backlog right there, I just draw little lines, and it makes it feel like everything's the same size. But in reality, you want the backlog to kind of look like a triangle or pyramid. Now, these stories at the bottom, we ain't going to work on them anytime soon. They're not the hottest thing in the world. We're not going to spend a lot of time on them. So they're not really well broken down or probably that well understood. They're understood enough to know that we don't want it right now. So those stories on the backlog are going to be pretty large in size and not well understood because we haven't just like chipped into them and ripped them apart. We'll get to them maybe. So we're not going to spend a bunch of time. They're big. As we start moving up to like the middle, those have already elevated and we've chopped those up. And we said like, oh, when we start thinking about this, it's actually 4 ideas or 6 ideas. And inside of those 6, like there's a couple more and half of them are junk and a couple of them are good. So the stories get a little bit smaller and more broken down as they start to pile up in the middle. Then the things at the top, those are the ones that like, we're going to have to work soon. So me as the product owner, I know I got to help my team out because in 2 weeks or whenever the sprint planning is, they're going to come in and ask, what are we doing next? What do you want to accomplish next? What can we build for the product? Tell me more. And I can't go, well, maybe, who knows? But they're going to look at me like I'm a fool. So we have to take these stories and we have to break them down even smaller. Meaning like, okay, we're working this like an epic, like a big thing. We're working this email account. Now, inside the email, there is a functionality that we can edit different things there. And the edit button does this. And then there's a little thing here where if you hit a microphone, you can record blah, 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 blah. And it does it right there. Okay, that's a little feature. Boom, we can do that down. So all those little features get broken down even smaller, like there. And the farther they go up, the smaller they get so that it's like a, couple hours worth of work, a little chunk. So they start becoming like little bubbles in the bottom of a champagne or glass or whatever. So the stories at the top get broken down into really small things. Imagine if there's like a hole at the top of the pyramid that they got to come out of. So in order to get them like this, the product owner has to talk to people, think about the ideas, close their door and like, what the hell do I want? How would this work? What does the customer need? What was the feedback? So the product owner's responsibility is whoever they got to talk to, however many guys they got to talk to, and in whatever way, get the backlog, this top stuff ready. Definition of ready. So that when we step into the product or the sprint planning meeting, it's not a bunch of hemming and hawing. It's like, dude, I got this stuff ready for you. Let's talk about it. That's what we got to do. There we go. There's more to Agile, but that's pretty much it. And at the end of the day, the whole thing that we're trying to do, if you wanted like a just like summarize it, it's like drive value faster, get feedback faster, get things out for the customer to say, I like it or I don't, give me more, give me less, give me different. That's what we want. I'll finish out with this. Like, everyone wants to be perfect. I think, I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. The fear is of like, they will judge me. They will think I'm stupid. They will not like us. They will whatever. I want to make it as good as possible before I get it out. You want to operate with like excellence and, things working, but the best thing to do is make something, be passionate about it, and get it in the hands of someone that can use it. And from that, you get the feedback loop back. That's the whole thing we're trying to do. Any questions? We did an hour and 15 minutes of Agile Rants. It's called Agile Rants with Scott. I've spent a lot of money making these mistakes, dudes. Like, oh God. Like, but that's like, it's more expensive than college, but it's more fun.